大家好，我是OooobeWang，上课喽。
In this video, we will demonstrate how to write each notations. These 37 notations are not only the commonly used pronunciation symbols of Chinese, but also the common glyphs in Chinese. So learning to write 37 Bopomofo notations is also learning how to write Chinese characters. The origin of Bopomofo notation is provided to those who want to study Chinese in more depth. However, the original meanings does not affect the text it marks at all. We share these informations with those who have certain Chinese abilities. If you are a beginner in Chinese, as long as you can read plus write Bopomofo notations first, it is enough.
Bopomofo.
This notation is one of the most common glyphs in Chinese. It looks like a person bending to wrap something, bending forward. This notation is the deformation of the most common glyphs in Chinese. It means knocking with a wooden stick in hand softly. This glyph is transformed from word 1, like a piece of cloth with both sides hanging down to cover things. The shape of this glyph is just like a container can take objects like pull-out box. The glyph is taken from the pictogram of knife. From upside down, the shape of a arms open baby means something happens unexpected. This notation comes from the glyph. It's the homophones word with this word. This notation comes from the calligraphic form of this word li, shaped like muscle, about manpower. This notation comes from the glyph like water, keep on flowing slowly, waterway in fields. This notation comes from the glyph, which means the breath is blocked by a horizontal stroke and cannot be exhaled, blocked. This notation comes from the glyph, which means the rocky protrusions on the mountainside provide a place where people can take shelter. To pronounce these three notations, we have to clench the front teeth.
Ji, ji, qi, qi, xi, xi, ji.
This notation comes from the glyph, which means silk or things tangled.
Qi.
This notation comes from the glyph, which means little water stream, waterway in fields.
Xi.
This notation comes from the glyph, which means bottom.
知是是日
To pronounce these three notations, we have to clench the front teeth.
知知吃吃诗诗日日知
This notation comes from the glyph, which means outward, grass become bigger. Just like a plant that has passed the budding stage, its branches and stems are growing stronger and expanding.
吃
This notation comes from the glyph, which symbolizes walking or following in small steps.
诗
This notation comes from the glyph, which looks like the shape of body laying.
日
The shape of this notation comes from the sun. It symbolizes the light and day.
滋刺丝滋滋呲呲丝丝滋
This notation comes from an ancient word, which means the ancient token representing identity and power.
呲
This notation is a deformation of the Chinese character for the number 7.
丝
This notation comes from an ancient word, which means private, not public.
一物语一一乌乌鱼鱼一
This notation comes from the Chinese number word 1.
乌
This notation comes from the glyph, which means the cross time between day and night.
鱼
This notation comes from the glyph, which looks like a container for pronounced by pursed lips.
阿欧俄雷
啊啊哦哦
呃
诶诶啊
This notation comes from the glyph like the divergence of things.
哦
This notation comes from this ancient word.
呃
This notation is a deformation notation and is created for pronunciation.
诶
The sound and shape of this notation come from the variant of this word.
I A O O
I A O O I
This notation comes from the variant of this word.
A
The shape of this notation is flipped horizontally of this word. Ansonant meaning is about moving.
O
The sound and shape of this notation come from the variant of this word, like a child just born.
O
The shape and sound of this notation come from this word, originally means hand, again and more.
安
安
恩恩
昂 昂 an
The shape of this notation is like a flower in bud. The shape of this notation is like a man hiding himself.
ang
The shape of this notation is like crooked calves, crooked leg. The shape of this notation is like the bent arm.
er
This notation is the variant of the Chinese word human. That's it for today. Remember to download and print the PDF file for writing practice, or download the JPG file to practice on your mobile phone. Ciao.